Hey everybody, it's me, Minu. I just wanted to talk a bit about the presidential election and why I even voted, because a lot of people think that their votes don't count. And it's kind of true, but also not true. It's a weird thing. I'm gonna talk about it. Oh, forgot to mention, I am wearing my Junji Ito shirt. Over here. That is Tomie. Again, do not watch Tomie. Do not look her up if you cannot handle horror, if you cannot handle gore, violence, um, and body horror. If you can't handle it, don't look it up. But it's just me. I like this, so I put the shirt. But first off, super happy and excited that we got to vote Trump out of office. And that these past 4 years has been a lot. It's been a lot. And even though I don't really like Biden that much, it was just like, look, we just got to get Trump up out of here, man. We can't do 4 more years of this. This is a mess. And it's really interesting thinking about it because I know that there are some people who I've talked to who are like, I'm not even gonna vote because my vote don't count or my vote doesn't matter. And I was like, even if it doesn't, just try anyway. And I know that's kind of hard to tell people, but like just do it anyway. You never know. You never know. And I happen to be in a very red state that has always been Republican, but I went out and I voted anyway because you never know. And it paid off this time. Sometimes it don't pay off. This time it paid off. I voted, and the candidate that I voted for is the president-elect. I'm very excited. I'm excited about. I didn't even know that Kamala was going to be like the first black woman or slash South Asian woman to be the vice president. Didn't even know that we was hitting a milestone like that. More power to you. Happy about that as well. But I want to talk a little bit about why I even voted in the first place, because I come from a community, a poor black community where people feel like, it doesn't matter. Voting doesn't matter because they're just going to do whatever they want to do. The people in power, they're going to find a way to get what they want, whether we vote or not. And it's true, but also it don't hurt to try. It doesn't hurt to try and vote and, have hope that this time your vote will count, this time your vote will stick. And I say it's because back in 2016, that was the first time that I voted because I didn't know anything about the elections. I didn't know anything about politics. I wasn't interested in politics. I didn't care. I was just like, it is what it is. And I just happened to have some liberal friends in college who were like, no, you have to vote. You have to do it. And I was like, okay, I'm voting. I'm going to do it. I didn't vote in the primaries. So that was my first fuck up. I should have voted in the primaries in 2016. I didn't. So when it came down to the presidential election, I was like, okay, well, I gotta vote Hillary. I don't understand why Trump is running. Like, it didn't make any sense as to why he was running. He didn't seem like a good candidate for anything. But a lot of people voted for him, which I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand it. I'm not gonna try to understand it. But it wasn't until I, grew up in an all poor black community, went to a college that was predominantly white. Yes, there was a lot of liberal white people who felt guilty about racism, and they were like, "Oh, Minu, I'm so sorry about slavery," and I'm like, "Okay," but there was also surprisingly some right wing, conservative, Republican white people who would come up to me and say, "Minu, let me tell you about why I think all black people want to be on welfare and food stamps and they don't care about nuclear families. They just want to live off the government." And I'd be like, why the fuck did you just come to me to have this conversation? I don't understand why you wanted to have this conversation with me. I don't even know you like that. What is this? I've been told I give off the vibe of somebody who's just like open to talking to anybody, which is true. I'm not super judgy. I like to know where people's ideas come from. So it's not like you're going to come to me and be like, I voted for Trump, and I'm just going to be like, fuck you, go die. I'm going to be like, why? And then, we can have a conversation about it. I'm not somebody who's like that, aggressive about it. But I had some white people who were very, very aggressive about it. And I had it from both sides. I had the poor white people who felt like they had a disadvantage in the country, and they felt like the black people got all the food stamps and all the welfare and all of that stuff, and they were just out there struggling, and no one cares about the poor white people, even though the majority of the food stamp recipients are white, but whatever. And then I had the rich white people who were like, well, if we can be rich and do all of this, why are these black people just choosing to be on drugs and have a bunch of babies and not raise them and just live off food stamps? And I couldn't really talk much to those people because it's like, you're just greedy. You just don't want to pay taxes. That's just really your whole thing. You don't want to pay taxes. That's it. We don't have to talk anymore about it. But they would talk to me. They would come to me and I'm like, I got to tell you about black people because you're black. And it was just like, okay, might have to be voting. I might need to do something about this. And I did not think that Trump was going to win in 2016. I did not. I was fully prepared. I didn't even think about it. I went to bed on Tuesday. I woke up the next morning. They was like, Trump won. I was just like, okay, but why? I didn't understand. I didn't understand because it just seemed like common sense to me. Someone who hadn't even voted before. I hadn't even voted before, but it seemed like common sense to me that Trump was not qualified to be the president. And it was so interesting because people were telling me, well, we need a businessman in office. And I was like, why? Why does it need to be a businessman? Why can't it be a politician or someone who has a background in law? Maybe. I don't understand why I had to be a businessman, but also this businessman you were voting for, he failed at business. So I don't understand. I think they just didn't want Democrats in office. That's really what it is. They didn't like the last 8 years. They don't want a Democrat in office. Whoever was the Republican, they was going to vote for him regardless. And if that was all they said to me, I would have been like, well, okay, whatever. Yeah, you're Republican. You want a Republican in office. Fine. But it's like they had to go so much further about it. They had to be like, I want Trump specifically because he's going to do all these things that are going to hurt people of color that I want. And that's why I want him in office. And I'd be sitting there like, you hate immigrants that much? Like, I mean, y'all be I see y'all at the Mexican restaurants getting margaritas and eating taquitos and shit, but you are over here mad because there are immigrants? That doesn't make any sense. And it's not going to make any sense. It did not make any sense to me until I spent an entire semester learning about race and racism and philosophy and learning about pre-modern slavery, modern slavery, the Memphis Massacre of 1866, the massacres in New Orleans, the massacres in Mississippi. Like, I started looking at all of these things and learning about all these things that happened post-slavery. And I think that's when my brain started to make sense of what the white people were thinking. Like, in reality, white people in this country have been scared ever since 1865 because they are scared that black people are going to get revenge on them for slavery. I mean, should I say you shouldn't be worried? I don't know. I don't speak for all black people. I'm just me, so who knows? But they've just been scared about that the whole time, and they just been like, man, if we could just convince black people that slavery, that they shouldn't be mad about it anymore, maybe we can, live the life we want in America, or the life they was already living in America, whatever. But it wasn't until I had to deal with those white people that I was like, wow, they really out here trying to stop Latino people from getting an education. They're really out here trying to stop Latino people from coming into the country to have a better life. They really, really don't like gay people. They really, really don't like women having access to proper reproductive care, whether that be abortions or condoms or, IUDs or birth control. Like, they just don't want you to have it. They don't want you to have it. And it was just weird for me. It's like you care so much about what other people are doing. Like, it's not even like, it's literally something that is these things, they don't affect you. You know, whether a Latino person goes to college doesn't affect you. You just go to college too. You know, or whether a queer person can get, whether a trans person can get hormone therapy to live their life the way they want, it doesn't affect you. You don't have to pay their medical bills. You just like, I just don't want these people to exist. You know, or even when gay people get married, it's like, you wouldn't even know that gay people were married. Like it would, you would never have to run into a person who would just be like in your face on the street, like, this is me and this is my wife and we are a lesbian married couple. They probably wouldn't even want to talk to you because y'all ain't that fun to talk to. But anyway, I want back to what was going on in college. So in college, I was the type of person who, I could talk to anybody. I didn't really care what your background was. I didn't make judgments about people. I just wanted to talk to people, get a feel for, like, you know, where your thoughts came from, what your culture was like, where you grew up like. And so I talked to a lot of people who were very, very problematic. You know, you had the white guys who thought they were edgy and funny by making racist jokes. You had the rich white people who didn't want their taxes to go to those welfare queen black women. You know, you had the poor white people who were mad because they felt like that they've been suffering with poverty and they don't like that thought of privilege because they're poor. So how do they have privilege? I was getting all of that. So it was a really interesting thing for me to talk to these people because I understand now why people don't want to waste their time talking to a right winger or conservative, because even when you come at them in a very respectful way, like I was just like, I just want to know, like, you know, what your thoughts on these things are. You know, please tell me why you don't like Martin Luther King. Because that's a new one for me. Their arguments were just so aggressive. You know, instead of them telling me, you know, why they felt the way they felt or why they thought the things they thought, they just kind of stuck with, you know, black people just want to live off the government and black on black crime and, you know, the same talking points. Even though the majority of food stamp recipients are white, they still believe that black people, like, even from a young age, they believe that we aspire to live off the government. We aspire to have a bunch of kids and live off food stamps and government assistance. And it was so weird because they were talking to a black woman in college who was not on food stamps or welfare or government assistance. You know, I mean, you know, I had some state grants for people who were poor, but it wasn't like my goal was to be on welfare because I'm in college getting a degree. And it was just weird that that's what's their talking points, and their talking points are so aggressive. They're not really based in a lot of facts. You know, when you try to ask them where their thoughts came from or where their ideas came from, you know, they couldn't really produce receipts. They couldn't really produce any type of supporting documents or statistics. You know, they was just yelling out things. They was just like, you know, all Muslims want to kill and rape women, or, you know, black men are assault are aggressive and they're criminals and that's why there's a lot of them in jail, and black women want to live off food stamps and government assistance, so they kick the men out of the home so that they don't have to, you know, pay their own bills so that they can get government assistance. It was nothing that made sense. So even though I would talk to some people like that and they'd be, you know, very rude and disrespectful, I still was open to talking to people about their experiences. I still was open to, you know, just seeing if I could just, you know, understand where you were coming from. Maybe you could understand where I'm coming from. And even though in those situations it didn't pay off, I had one situation where it did pay off with a friend of mine who was a white woman. Let's just call her. No, she had a really basic name. And it's weird because it's like, if I was to think of a basic white girl name, it's exactly the name that she had. And it's crazy because it's like I don't want to actually say her name, but also the name that I would pick for someone like this is exactly what her name is. Let's just call her Sarah. You know, I don't know a lot of Sarahs. I'm gonna call her Sarah. And so I met Sarah in college. You know, she was just, you know, this white woman. She talked to everybody. You know, she had black friends, but again, you know, that doesn't really mean anything. Um, but she had black friends, and she, you know, liked talking to me, and we would talk and hang out and everything. And so um, around 2016 was when I started in this history course that was actually a documentary filmmaking course, and we were going to talk about the Memphis Massacre of 1866. For those of you who don't know what that is, it is basically right after slavery in Memphis, Tennessee. The white Irish people, not the people who were part of the Confederacy or nothing. These was white Irish people. They was poor, blah blah blah. Decided that they was gonna kill every black person in the city, and so that went on for 3 days of them just murdering people, burning houses down, raping people, and they specifically chose a day when the Union soldiers, weren't there, so that they could get away with what they were doing. So it was really messed up, and I was like, "This is really interesting. I want to learn more about this, and make a documentary on it." And so she was also into history. She loved history, and so she was like, "Yeah, well, I want to be a part of this too." And I was like, "Are you sure? Because you kind of got some racism in you, ma'am." And she was like, "What are you talking about? I love black people. I have black friends." I'm like, "Yeah, but you can tell when a white person is very defensive around certain topics." And so she would make these arguments, and it was not warranted at all. It was not like I said anything that would, trigger her to make these arguments. She just felt like she had to say it. And so she would say, like, "Yeah, my family fought in the Confederacy, but some of my family fought in the Union too, so it's not that bad." Or she would say, "Yeah, some of my family's in the KKK, but the KKK isn't as bad as you think." And I was like, "What KKK you talking about?" Because KKK I'm talking about, that was very bad. There's a whole movie about it. There's a whole book about it. What are you talking about? Um, but that's how she had been raised, and she loved history. But the only history she knew was the history that her family had taught her, which was, yeah, slavery was bad, but we weren't really part of that. Or those of us who were a part of it, we were good slave owners. We weren't bad slave owners. We treated our slaves good. And then it was the other part of that she also had some white Irish in her family who they was like, the Irish were persecuted and they were poor, and they were oppressed too, as if it was some kind of way to absolve her or her family from any type of racial guilt. And it just came off like really weird. Like, it's like you're saying, "Yeah, my family was in the Confederacy, yeah, my family is in the KKK, but here's some other things that might make it seem not as bad." And it still sounded bad. You still sounded bad. And I would just talk to her, and be her friend, and just like listen to what she would say. And she said something that a lot of white conservative people talk about is, "I'm afraid to speak my mind," or "I'm afraid to reveal that I have these ideas and these thoughts because I don't want people to attack me," which is fair. We're on a liberal campus. It was 2016. It was a lot of stress on everybody, and everybody was fighting. Everybody was like, "Hey, you vote for Trump, I don't fuck with you no more, period." And so there was a lot of that going on. So I could see how they felt like, I can't tell people, what my political ideology is because I don't want to like lose friends or have people call me racist or whatever. So I got that. And I mean, I never just blatantly called her racist. I just told her it was a bit sus that her family was in the KKK and the Confederacy, and that she just believed everything that they said about it, and she was all about the Confederate flag is about history, it's not about slavery, blah, 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 blah. All the normal talking points, things I heard before. she got to the point where I was like, hey, I'm going to make this documentary about the Memphis Massacre, and it's not done by the Confederates, it's done by the Irish. And that's something that really confused her, because she was like, oh yeah, I love history, I'm going to be a part of making a documentary. But then I was like, okay, but just so you know, you were kind of using your Irish heritage as a way to absolve yourself of like guilt about slavery. So these Irish people, they didn't own slaves because they were poor, but they did want to kill all the black people. And she was like, no, I love history. I know a lot about history, blah, 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 blah. And so you could see the transformation in her, even from the beginning. She felt more open talking about her bad ideas. And I had a white professor who was helping with the film, and that white professor shut her down. That was like, look, I am a historian. I've been in the game for 25, 30 years. There's no such thing as a nice KKK. I'm sorry. They're not. And it's crazy because I knew that when I said it, it didn't mean much. When my white professor said it, I saw that it actually affected her and it meant something. And there was that part too. It's like, another part of racism is that you don't value the opinions of non-white people. Like, they can say everything that they want to say, but at the end of the day, you see the color of their skin and you're just like, no. And I knew that, and I kind of brought it up, and she was like, no, that's not what it is. But as she got more comfortable with me, she was like, I'm gonna be honest with you, Minu. Yeah, I kind of dismissed a lot of what black people said because I thought that they were still just mad about slavery, and like that's their one talking point. That's the one thing they always bring up, is slavery this and slavery that. And so I just stopped listening to them. And I was like, yeah, I noticed. I noticed, but it's like, I understand, because you've been raised in this super racist family where I think what white people get confused about racism does not necessarily mean you hate black people and you're a bad person. Now, you can be racist and you hate black people and you are a bad person. That you can do all of that, but that's not exactly what it means, because racism is a systematic thing. It's like the foundation that America was built on. It's embedded in our education, our healthcare system, like all of that has racism in it. And there are certain people who benefit from racism and certain people who are actively oppressed by it. But you could be a racist person and still like black people. And that was her thing. She liked black people and she thought, I like black people. She listens to black music and hangs out with her black friends. I can't possibly be racist. But she was hella racist. Super racist. And that was the thing that I tried to convey to her, was that you can like us. You can like being around us. You can like hanging out with us. You can like listening to our music. But at the end of the day, if your core beliefs are, black people are just complaining about slavery. Ever since slavery ended, everything's been amazing for black people, but they won't stop complaining about slavery. Like, that's the only thing that's ever happened to black people in this country. And you close your ears, you close your eyes to all of the different things that were going on in terms of like the police violence against black people. Sadie, come here, you. And if you turn a blind eye to the police brutality towards black people, and don't get me wrong, there was some white people who suffer from it too, but it is a lot more black people who are suffering from it. So if you close your eyes and ears to that, you close your eyes and ears to the fact that we do have people in government positions in Congress who actively try to stop people of color and queer people from having the same human rights as everybody else. Like, they're actively doing that on a state level, on a local level, on a national level. They're doing that. And you are choosing not to see it and saying to yourself, like, no, that didn't happen. So the interesting thing was, as we started to go through the documents, the thing about the Memphis Massacre was that it was investigated by the FBI. So there was all of these testimony from people who were actually involved in it, who were victims of it and some people who perpetuated it. And so it's not like it was just some story or old folk tale passed down from generations that black people just tell so that they can get other black people mad. That's not what it was. It was literally like the government investigated this and they confirmed that this happened and these things happened and people were named by name, and the government still said, yeah, we're going to document that this happened, but nobody's going to jail. Come on now. You really want us to throw these police officers who broke into people's houses and um, murdered people and stole their money and guns? We're not going to prosecute those people. No, we're not doing it. So as we were going through these testimonies that we were reading, and she was reading this, it really started to get her, because she was like, my family never said anything about something like this happening. And granted, she wasn't from Memphis, but the way that her family had told her that things happened during slavery and after slavery, the way her mind worked was that after slavery, everything was good. Black people were good, they was free, everything was fine. And, they got mad again up in around the 60s or whatever, but it was just them just being mad about slavery still. It had nothing to do with Jim Crow laws or nothing like that. So it started to get to her like, my family's never told me about this, and I love history, and I'm reading these testimonies of people saying that the Irish, who were also part of her family, because they were police officers who were attacking black people. They were burning down black churches. They were burning down black schools. They were assaulting black women. They were killing black men. They were doing a lot of things that sound kind of really familiar right now. They were doing all of that way back then. And so when a black person would come up and say things haven't changed that much, her and other white people would be like, oh, that's not true. That's not true. There's been so much progress, so many things. But police are still killing black people and getting away with it. So it ain't changed that much. Not that much, no. But I could tell that it was starting to get to her, because these were facts. These were not stories that were told 10, 20, 30 years later. This was literally immediately after the carnage and the violence stopped that people were talking about what happened, and they remembered it so vividly, and the testimonies captured all of that. It captured the deaths, it captured the businesses, schools, and churches that burned down and the amount of property damage. It captured what the media was saying about the event and what people believed was happening. So it was just a lot of facts, and she had a hard time dealing with it. It was like, you could see she started having nightmares and everything. She started being like, she was starting to see why the Confederate flag was such a problem for black people. She was starting to see why black people were so upset about police brutality. Even though you're reading about something that happened in the 1860s, it's the same thing that was happening that's been happening. So in her mind, she thought everything had stopped and everything was fine. But it's very obvious that after the Civil War ended, after slavery ended, it was not fine. It might have been fine for like a quick minute, where black people were really happy and they were like, hey, I get to be, I'm a citizen now. I'm a free person, gonna build my house, take care of my family. It was a happy for a moment. But it was a moment. It was like a short moment before things in the country went to shit again. So I think that it really shook her to the point where she was like, I need to do research. I need to go to these Black Lives Matter meetings. I need to learn more about what's going on. And I could understand some of her struggle, because she was like, if this is wrong, if everything that I've been taught is wrong, does that mean that my family, that I'm racist, that my family is racist, that my grandparents who still like to do Civil War reenactments on the Confederacy side, that they're racist? And I can understand that that was very difficult for her. But again, like as I assured her, it's not like it's just like you're a bad person because you're racist. You could be racist and be a nice person. It's really that you have these ideas these fundamental ideas that are wrong and that are rooted in the oppression of people of color. And that's really what it is. And when you grow up in a country where the education system is racist, it makes sense that you're just going to believe racist things because that's what you read in the books. You know, like I remember I read about slavery like once in school and then it glossed over it. Like, yeah, slavery happened, but then this happened with Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War. Like it just kind of glossed over it. They didn't want to talk about it. And I can imagine other states, especially southern states, probably talked about it in a very racist way, like it was just no big deal, like it was just a blip on the map, it just happened, you know. So I can understand her turmoil, and I was like, look, I'm still your friend, and you know, I'm still here to talk with you and everything, but I need you to start understanding how the things you say and do and the votes that you vote for affects us and why we're upset. And it was really hard for her at first, but as she started to educate herself more, she started to listen to Black people talk about their experiences. That's when she started being like, oh shit, this is real. This is really still happening to people. I did not think that it was. I thought it was just about slavery, but then all this other stuff has been happening that has nothing to do with slavery, and that's why they're upset. And that was a really big turning point for her. And I told her, I said, look, you don't have to go home on Thanksgiving and Christmas and curse out your whole family and say they're all racist and liars and denounce them and be like, I'm not in this family anymore, I'm gone. You know, you don't have to do all of that, okay? Because I got some racist family members my damn self. But I told her what you can do is you can educate yourself to make informed decisions, to make sure that you are thinking critically about the news and the media that you're watching, absorbing whatever's being said on Facebook. Think critically about it. Don't take it at face value. And if you can, talk to your friends and family and present this other argument. If they don't want to talk about it, don't talk about it. Don't put yourself in a bad situation. But if you can, just, you know, give it a shot. And I remember after George Floyd, somebody somewhere told white people, I don't know who it was, somebody somewhere told white people to all check in on their Black friends. And I get the sentiment, but I was not in the mood to talk to white people. So I was getting like, you know, messages from people who I hadn't talked to in years like, hey Mimi, are you okay? And I'm just like, Black people been dying. Why you just now checking in on me? You should have checked in on me years ago. Fuck. But Sarah was one of the people who reached out to me and was like, you know, I understand it's a difficult situation, difficult time, you know, if there's anything I can do and all of that stuff. And I was like, well, ain't nothing you can do for me because I've been Black and I'm gonna stay Black. But what you can do is educate your friends and family about what's really happening, because there was a lot of misinformation about what was happening. And it was just like in the Memphis Massacre of 1866. The police force was saying, we want to kill all the Black people, not run them out of town. We want to kill all the Black people. And then they would go in the media and they would go in the newspaper and say the Black people was rioting and looting and just burning their whole neighborhood down and burning their churches and schools down. Savages. That's not what happened. There was no evidence that was what happened. The Black people were the victims. And that's why I told her, I was like, you see just how this happened back then. You gotta be careful about the news sources. You know what news sources have biases. You gotta make sure you're thinking about where these articles are coming from and what these articles are saying. If you're not doing that, then you're doing yourself a disservice, really. So I told her to do that, and I was like, hey, just educate yourself. Try to educate your friends and family. That's really all you can do. You can't do nothing for me. And every other white person that reached out to me, I said, look, I'm taking a break from white people for a while. And I had to. I didn't want to deal with, guilty white people being like, man, I saw that Floyd video and I was so sad and I had to reach out to you and let you know Black Lives Matter or whatever. No, I don't need that from you. I mean, you could go take some action. You know, you could go to some protests and stuff and, you know, spread the word, but I don't need nothing from you on a personal level, you know. This ain't the first time black people have been murdered in this country in horrific, torturous ways. It's been going on for years and years and years. And I think that that's part of what made the Trump presidency this last 4 years so difficult, was because it's like suddenly I'm much more aware of everything that's going on. And it's a lot. It's a lot of shit that went on, like from the mass shootings, the school shootings, you know, protesting over the death of black people. Um, then it was the climate change getting worse and worse and worse. Then COVID happened, and in addition to black people being killed by police, you had black people dying of COVID. You had the misinformation, the fear mongering, the and I would say that white people was rioting and looting. They want to say it was just black people. White people was turning the fuck up over a mask, you know. Um, the attacks on queer people in the military, the changes in the taxes that put us more in debt. Like, it was just a lot of craziness in this last 4 years. And some of it I wasn't surprised about. Some of it is stuff that's been happening. So, you know, so the people who say, well, Trump didn't start that, some of this stuff been happening. But Trump made it worse. Trump could have came in and he could have said, we're going to put a stop to this. It's awful. He didn't. He amplified all the horrible things that the country was doing. Other countries already don't like us. They already don't like us. And here we are fucking up. And it was just frustrating because I'm like, this guy who I didn't vote for is fucking up, making us look bad in every other country, having all these crimes and stuff going on, got other countries looking at us like we crazy. And it was just a very, very embarrassing 4 years. You know, I got friends in other countries like, Minu, are you okay? Because it don't look okay over there. And I was like, it's not okay over here. It's fucking terrifying. And they were like, why did y'all vote for Trump? I didn't vote for him. I didn't. He lost the popular vote. And so for me to find out on Saturday that he lost the electoral college vote, that was a huge win for me. I instantly texted, you know, my overseas friends, and like, oh my God, you know, it's not like I can breathe completely free because Biden ain't that good, but at least it's not Trump. Because I know that if Trump got another 4 years, he was going to wild the fuck out and do everything that he wanted to do that he didn't do before, because he was campaigning to be reelected damn near from inauguration day. So we don't have to worry about that. But now we got to watch Biden and Kamala and be like, hey, you get your shit together because we paying attention right now. And you better act straight. Because neither one of them, you know, are the most progressive of candidates. You know, they may not be completely for all the things that I would want. But we won't get worse. But maybe we could get better. There could be the potential of that. It's hard to say right now because it's still all in the beginning stages. But I feel like at least we got to a point where we can be like, okay, we're coming around. Some of us have come around. A lot of Trump supporters came around and realized that he wasn't going to help them, that he hadn't helped them, that he made things worse for them. So I'm really proud of the Trump supporters, because I know it was hard. I know it was hard to say that you voted wrong. I know you had some people, some leftists and some liberals being like, nana, nana, boo, boo, you dumb, you know, like in your face. Your president is an orange pumpkin evil man. But some of them came around, instead of feeling like they had to defensively vote for him, they at least came around and were like, okay, we can't do this anymore. You know, in 4 years, I know it was fun for some of y'all. Because you got to, you know, get your Muslim bans and your Latino bans, and you got to harass people of color and queer people because Trump was in the office and you was feeling yourself. But now that he's out of office, I'm gonna need y'all to sit back down. Like, Y'all was wilding too fucking much for the past 4 years. Y'all need to sit down. Don't even say nothing. You don't even have to be like, I voted for Trump and I'm sorry. You don't have to say nothing. You don't have to say nothing. The company, Chick-fil-A and them, the companies that, supported him and his policies, you don't have to say nothing. Just shut up for the next 4 years. And let us have some peace and quiet. I don't even want to come after you. I just want you to be quiet. Just sit down. And let us, do what we got to do these next 4 years to get our country back on track. Sad that we'll probably never have Bernie as president, but we got AOC out there, we got Rashida Tlaib out there. We got some good people who are doing good things, and I can say I'm kind of hopeful. I'm kind of hopeful, especially because more of us are watching. You have those of us who ain't even old enough to vote, they're watching and they're paying attention to what's going on in politics, and they're going to vote. And that's really just that's the only good thing that came out of these last 4 years, is that more people are voting and more people are thinking critically about the policies and the changes that are going on around them. So I'm a bit optimistic. 2020 has been a shit show. It's actually been a very good year for me. It's weird that everybody else is having a terrible time and I'm having some good moments, but I'm not going to do that because that's kind of mean. So yeah, but thank you guys so much for sitting through all of that and listening to me ramble on about my nonsense stories. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, be sure to like this video. If you don't like the video, leave a comment about why you don't like the video. Tell me about some of your experiences dealing with the alt-right or the super Republican Trump supporter people. And if you could, actually have a conversation with them and talk to them, or if they just buried their head in the sand and just said, I don't care about facts and truth anymore. But tell me about some of your experiences, and I will see you guys in the next